Howdy, guys. We're back for episode 7 of the Land Talk podcast. We're here today talking more about land. Hopefully some useful information here that you can find as you're searching for land, trying to find a place to make your own, or you're thinking about selling. So today we're going to cover the topic of land pricing. So land pricing is always kind of an enigma. It's kind of hard to track sometimes. Prices go up, they go down, and it's kind of confusing why that happens sometimes. So with me today, I've actually got my dad with me, Walter. He's going to help me cover some of those topics today. So give us a little of your background and kind of what you do here at Texas Rec Land, all that kind of good stuff.
Well, I'm a real estate agent here at Texas Rec Land. Obviously, you're the broker. And I sell real estate, mainly rural land, and every now and then homes. So that's what I do. This is my retirement job. It's not what I normally did when I retired. I was looking for something to do, and this came along, and it's been good for me.
Yeah, how long have you been doing that for?
About 9 years. About 8 to 9 years.
Right. So when we're looking at pricing, I feel like when we get in this every day, the number one question that buyers have is, what is the price of land? And a lot of times we get a lot of flack of, maybe things are priced too high, maybe they're priced too low. Obviously, sellers want to sell for the most, buyers want to buy for the lowest. What are some things that kind of drive price changes? And let's say it drives the price up. What if we're looking at a property from year to year? What could drive a price up from the past?
With almost any commodity, including land, it's demand and it's supply. So if there's something, a piece of property that is in high demand and there's a low supply of those kind of properties, obviously the prices are going to go up. And the market takes care of that, and we're lucky that it does. The market will go to a point, and then when it gets too high, if the market is working right, which it usually does, it will correct itself. Or if it gets too low, it will correct itself.
Yeah, and I feel like land is it's very, very, very similar to the stock market. And I know stock market's kind of tough to understand sometimes too, but historically in those markets, you're going to see generally a market that's climbing, and at some point it's going to hit an apex, and then it has to come down. So we know that markets don't go up forever. There's always going to be some kind of correction. But what are some local things? I know looking at a broad perspective, but from a local perspective, how can prices change, let's say, here where we are near Rockdale versus other areas?
Well, I think one thing that fuels the market is the things that have been going on in the country the last X number of years. Various problems in various parts of the country. It has sent a lot of people to Texas, be that tax issues, climate issues, or whatever. And then, of course, a lot of those people end up in Austin. And I think some of those people, once they get to Austin, and they maybe they do not like living in that urban area, and they want to get out further here, either for a place for the weekend, or maybe they're preparing to retire, or they just want to live here and drive back and forth. So That's one thing that influences. Then the other thing is the industries that are coming around, particularly the Taylor area, and drifting into this area, and then the things that are planned for the future here certainly is driving up the market.
Yeah. So looking back a few years, obviously COVID seemed to spike prices exponentially faster than we've seen before. What were some factors there of COVID kind of driving things up?
I think, we've talked about this some. I think people started to look at their lives, and things became very uncertain because of that. And maybe they looked at their life and they said, hey, if I want to get what I've always wanted, which may be a piece of land, now's the time to do it. And then interest rates were certainly still low. Mm-hmm. So that helped that.
Yeah, so I think access to cheap money was one of the notes I had here. Yeah. How does access to cheap money, what does that do for pricing, and what does that do for buyers?
Well, it allows the buyer to make the monthly payments. Mm-hmm. Going in to buy property, the down payment is going to be more or less the same. You're going to have to pay a certain percentage down, but then when you get to the monthly payment, that is influenced by interest, and it allowed a lot of people to be in the market Whereas these higher interest rates that we're experiencing now, I think is taking a lot of people out of the market.
Yeah, and I think during pre-COVID, I think cash was king. I think if you had cash, you were able to do more things with cash. But once you got into COVID, cash kind of became not king, for lack of a better word. And I think that cheap money was doing that. I think that we had a lot of folks come in that could offer cash, but we had a lot of other folks who would come in and finance it, and they were offering over asking, and they could do that because with the interest rates being so low, they just had a lot of flexibility and a lot of power at that point. So now that we're getting into kind of higher inflation, which I think inflation also drives prices up, we know that. But I think once you get too high of inflation, I think it has the opposite effect. So kind of now we're in a time of higher interest rates, and the prices have kind of either maintained or drifted down. What drives a price down on a property?
Well, again, certainly demand. So, I mean, once the interest rates go up, demand diminishes because it's taken a certain amount of people out of the market simply because they cannot afford those payments. So, it did, I think, decrease the demand for property. And if you decrease the demand, obviously the prices are going to go down.
Yeah, and I think the demand was decreased from high prices and high interest.
Sure.
And since that demand diminished, the supply has to go up. So if one goes down, we know the other one has to go up. So, and I feel like you run into kind of localized things where maybe if you have a failed project, if you have a big project coming into town and that falters, I think you can get kind of a localized drop in prices. And then from a broad perspective, I mean, typically a slowdown in a national economy would also lead to lower sales prices and properties just sit on the market longer. And I think that's kind of where we are now. Now, luckily, I think with the rates that are coming down slowly, what do you think, kind of what's your projection of pricing and land in the next 1 or 2 years?
Well, I think the interest rates come down. I think it puts those buyers that have left the market, I think it starts to put them back in the market. So I think demand will go up. I mean, it would have to.
Right, and I think we're at an ultimate high supply. I mean, looking back over the last 10 years, this is probably the most supply that I've ever seen. Therefore, demand has to be the lowest I've ever seen it. So,
yeah, and I mean, prices, demand and supply drive everything. We have talked. It's kind of a buzz, at least in my circle of friends, the extremely high cattle prices right now, and that's due to very high demand and very low supply. And it's true in any market. That are the main things that influence markets is supply and demand.
Right. So you've been around a long time, and you've bought land, sold land. What is there's always the magic, when do I buy land? So, we know that buyers want the best deal they can get. When can they get the best deal?
From my experience, as I've told people, I bought small properties over my lifetime, and I have never regretted buying one of those properties. My regret, looking back, has been the ones that I didn't buy. And I'll just give you an example. We have a small place. We don't live there. It's a small place fairly near where we do live. And I bought that in two sections. Like I say, it's a small place. I bought it at 6.2 acres, then 2 more acres that added onto it later. What I'm getting around to is I bought those when the market was spiked high. And back during that time, which was the early 80s, I thought to myself, am I ever going to get this money back? Well, I mean, all these years later, the price of that land is certainly extremely, extremely higher than what I paid for it. And my point is, it doesn't matter. If I had given twice what I gave for it, I wouldn't notice it now. Because if I'd given twice what I give for that land, the difference in what I gave and what it is now would be so great, I wouldn't even remember that. I mean, those two places, we gave $1,800 an acre for the 6 acres, approximately $2,500 for the 2 acres. Well, let's just say the 2 acres. If I'd have given $5,000 an acre, I wouldn't even remember that because the difference in 5,000 and what it's worth now is so great.
Right.
I wouldn't care.
And I think all this depends on your time frame. If it's something you're buying to keep, the timing probably matters substantially less. Now, if you're using land as an investment tool and you have a certain time to get in, a certain time to get out, I think that all matters substantially more. But I think we also have a lot of buyers that sit on the fence and they say, well, I'm gonna buy land or buy a house or whatever it is. I'm gonna buy it when the market tanks. And I think what people find is once the market tanks, the sentiment on buying a property is so bad, then they talk themselves out of buying it, even in a dip. And at some point, you may be 5 or 10 or 15 years down the road, and you didn't buy when maybe you should have, and now the lands or the properties double what it was then. So I think it's something that if it's your dream to own land or get a property or house or whatever it may be, maybe there's never the perfect time.
So there's never the perfect time, but I mean, if it's something you're going to keep for a number of years or it's something you've always dreamed of, the best time to buy is when you find what you want.
Right. And kind of the saying goes, the best time to plant a tree was 10 years ago.
Correct.
So the best time to buy a property was 10 years ago. And obviously we know we can't do that. So we're kind of, we don't get to predict the future, and we in hindsight, it's 2020. So, I think my take is if you want to buy land, if it's your dream, especially if you're going to hold on to it, you're probably not going to go wrong. It may feel wrong short term, but in the long term, historically speaking, the numbers always get better.
I mean, if you buy a piece of property, even if you pay, let's say, a little over the market, which nobody wants to do, but let's say you did, 20 years later, like I said before, you will not even remember what you gave for that property because you will have enjoyed it for 20 years. And then should you sell it at that time, the price difference is going to be so great you just simply wouldn't remember.
Right. What about selling property? So we've been talking about buying. When's the best time to sell?
I guess the best time to sell is obviously on the up market, but I mean the best time to sell is when you need to sell.
Yeah, selling gets a little tougher. I think buying's a little easier because it's something you're going to, especially if you're going to keep it. But selling gets a little tougher because it does come a lot more to timing. We can look back with people that sold in, let's say, 2018, what they sold for versus if they waited 2 more years in 2020, they could have gotten double. Now, the people that didn't sell in 2020 at the peak that went to sell in 2023 would have got less than the people in 2023. So we know markets are up and down. I think selling is substantially tougher. So that's a little more complicated. I think you're trying to predict a market that's a little unpredictable, but we definitely had a lot of sellers that kind of waited too long during COVID, and some of them didn't wait too long. They wanted to sell the property, but I think they kind of outpaced the market. They priced even further than where the market was, and then when things slowed down, they were kind of left holding the bag. What'd you see there?
Well, I mean, generally speaking, people sell property because they need to sell it. Now, if you've bought the property as an investment and you're picking a time to sell it, certainly, I mean, I would recommend somebody to watch the market, to do the research, and to see what the experts are saying about the future, and then pick a time to sell that property. Now, if you're just an individual who maybe you don't need the property anymore, maybe you need cash, then you would need to you would sell that property when the need arose to sell it.
Right, and I think land gives you the flexibility to where land is not cattle. You don't have to feed it. You don't have to take care of it. I mean, you have to pay taxes sometimes. But it's it's not a hungry investment that you have to take care of and manage. So that's kind of the good thing there. But yeah, selling I think is a whole different animal, and I think it does come down to timing a little more. And sometimes you're right, and I think sometimes you can be wrong. But we don't get a chance to predict the future sometimes. So
and as they say, particularly in the stock market, it's just as true in land. Don't ever apologize for making a profit. So I mean, if you buy land and you make a profit on it, you've done good.
Yeah.
Maybe you didn't make as much as you could if you'd have held off a couple of years, but I mean, all we have is today. We can't go back, and we don't know what the future holds.
Yeah. And we have a lot of sellers that don't want to pay capital gains, and I don't blame them because nobody wants to pay a tax. But my take is if you're paying a capital gains tax, it's because you made a gain. And
Definitely so.
That's always the goal. And
And I mean, particularly with rural land, it's so easy to own it. If you have an agricultural exemption, you're going to be able to hold that land, use that land, enjoy that land, and pay a very low tax.
Yep, and I think the good thing about particularly rural and raw land is that it's about as multi-use and flexible as it comes. I mean, if you buy an apartment, you have to use it as an apartment, but land, we know you can use it for one thing, and then the next year decide to use it for another, and it's fluid and dynamic. And I think that's kind of the draw in my mind to raw land, is that you can make it what you want. And
well, I mean, as you know, the way we've used our land, particularly the one land, you know which one I'm talking about. I use the land to run cattle on, which I don't make my living that way. It's something I enjoy doing. Right now, it is highly profitable. And we deer hunt on the property. We fish in the tanks. My grandkids come and enjoy the property. And then any property that I bought, without a doubt, I can sell that property now for much, much more than I ever gave for it. Yep. So, I mean, it's a win-win.
Yep. So I mean, that's the good thing about land. You can get short-term use, long-term use, lots of goals, lots of plans. It's just really flexible. So do you have anything else to add on that stuff today? I think that's...
Not really. I mean, land is a great investment. It's a great investment if it's something that you enjoy. It's one of those things that you can buy the land, you can enjoy the land. Then, if there becomes a time to sell it, if you need money back, you can get that.
Right.
And
right.
so I mean, I do have money in the stock market. The stock market is something I don't enjoy. That I mean, the money is there to make money, and what I'm saying is the land will also make me money, and I've been able to enjoy that land over a number of years.
Right. It's a little easier to make memories on land than the stock market. So
it's just a win-win if it's something you enjoy.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, guys, that wraps up episode 7 for us, talking about land prices. If y'all want to learn more about land, check out our website or give us a call and we'll check you out on episode 8.